Good afternoon. Welcome to the final hurrah panel of ID. I hope everyone's had as smashing a time as I have at the fair this year. I don't think I've ever skipped a season in Delhi, and thereby to be a part of like the first one in Bombay feels especially cool. To produce and host a debut launch as exciting since Fawad Khan, I have to say, let's give it up for the ID team here. We see so many faces. Okay, so I'm going to kick off with a personal story in line with the theme of storytelling. So about 12 years back, I used to run a dining club and incognito for about 4 years. So other than like my parents and dog, no one necessarily knew that I was the rascal doing this. So too bad and boo-hoo for my then boyfriend who had no idea this was me, but I had a little bit of a different challenge in hand. Essentially, it was about creating a new consumer and community for a new category of experience. And I think one of the central tenets of building a community is the personalization and how can you tell the story that adds value to a consumer. And I think just being kind of like faceless, I had to build my own like trifecta of solutions. So the pathway of that architecture included 3 things. So one was food, because you break ice when you break bread, and who better than these people who know that. The second one was words. I had to kind of like neatly sidestep that creepy uncle vibe. Sorry, men, we love you, but like I had to sidestep that and somehow make the pen or like my keyboard almost like the central alchemist and the negotiator of that story that I was trying to tell to my community. And then the third bit was design, which was, it could be something as seemingly innocent like the design of a menu and how you should feel with it, or like the lighting and what it offers to a space. So when I was given the opportunity of speaking about this topic with 3 important storytellers of our times, it felt especially relevant and cool and interesting, today. I think Pooja, Aditi, and Gauri, what they do is, and why they are personal favorites, which is why we were also giggling, right before this chat about like, what are the questions that are unexplored? Why I find them such personal favorites is because they are at that interesting cross-junction of story, food, business, impact, gender, whatever, and they seem to be at the center, up and center of that narrative. So thereby, we are on behalf of all of us, we are very interested to know how you fuse your personal story and share that via cuisine, design, what have you. If I may start with Gauri. Basically, across establishment, you end up telling a variety of stories, right? What I am keen to understand is if there is differential aesthetic or narrative that you drive because of the multiple spaces that you have.
So, hi everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for sticking around for the last panel. We've got a bunch of different brands. Our first restaurant was The Table, and with The Table, the whole sort of inspiration for that was my husband Jay, who I run the restaurant with and co-founded the restaurant with, used to live in San Francisco, and he had just moved back in 2008 from there, and I had moved back from London. And the whole dining scene that you see in Bombay today was not quite anything like that back, about 16 years ago. I feel very old. But yeah, 16 years ago. And we just missed having a piece of that, San Francisco style of food here. And by that, what I mean is just ingredient driven. It was nothing, no specific cuisine. And this is in a time when Bombay was all about Indian, Chinese, and Italian food, right? So when we opened The Table, everyone was like, but what is this? You know, what is this? And we were just like, guys, just come and enjoy the food. You know, you don't have to define everything. You know, it's kind of a taste, and it's a way of life in a way, which is what it is in San Francisco, because they're surrounded in California by such amazing produce that they just let that speak for itself, and they've kind of created a style of cooking and food around that idea of fantastic produce. And that's what we wanted to bring a little taste of to Bombay. And so I think, you know, to answer your question, what we did there with the table was to create something, and you know, like the introduction said, I have no background in F&B. I'm a lawyer and a CA by profession prior to hospitality. So it was really driven by what we were missing and what we personally wanted to dine at every day. And so the whole idea behind the design, and I have to mention that we actually took longer than normal to create that space. We took 14 months, which is abnormal in this industry. It's very expensive. And it was because we actually switched architects halfway, because the design was so critical as to how we wanted people to feel in that space. But the idea was that for those 2 hours that you spend there, you forget that you're in Bombay and you're transported somewhere else, and you know, wherever that might be for you. But the vibe we wanted to create was just a little bit of San Francisco and Bombay. And, you know, it meant different things to different people. So, you know, whether it was the chevron floor, whether it's the jazz music, whether it's the food, I think, you know, it can mean what it means to you, but that's what we try to create. And it's the same thing with Mag Street, which is our other brand, which is all about comfort food. We have 3 restaurants in Bombay, and they're all very different, because it's just like, let it be what it is to you. And then come, relax, enjoy the food. We don't want it to be intimidating. That's not the idea with, you know, hosting diners in your restaurant. And that's pretty much, you know, how we've thought about it. It's what would we like if we went to dine there.
I love that. I like the multiplicity of aesthetic and immersion, courtesy, that bigger vision that you have, which is come as you are, which you felt back, you know, in a previous chapter of your life, and how you use that to create the blueprint across your establishments. Aditi, I mean, how do you use those touch points of decor, design, mood, lighting, music, what have you, across your spaces, enough to kind of say that if there is a sense of immersion that you want, and when I say me, I mean, you know, diner at large and your community at large, at like a fine dine like Mask, but also a lot more relaxed deli, like say 27, how do you use those design threads across?
Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to Design ID. I mean, it's so exciting. I've been meaning to be part of this community since years, but haven't made it to Delhi. So very, very excited to have you guys in our city and to be on this panel with 3 powerful women. And so, yeah, leading into your question, Shreya, that, you know, for us, I think when we opened Mask, it was really that I think we were really the outlier. And also where we opened, it was in a destination that we had to really create to make it our own. And now, of course, like, you know, Mag Street has its own place and has become a destination. Even at Baikala, we wouldn't imagine restaurants or, you know, fine dining establishments to pop up in these obscure parts of the city, because it all meant, restaurants meant about location. But I think that, you know, when you have a strong concept, and I think design holds so true to that, and I think that also choosing our architect, Ashish Shah, who really, I think, designed the space for the future. I think even 8 years later, it's been so heartwarming. It's our 8th anniversary this month, and it's been so heartwarming with the kind of events that we've done at Mask this month. And every time somebody walks into the space, and they're like, oh my God, like, you know, the restaurant feels timeless. And obviously, when we designed it back then, it was almost like we designed it for ourselves, right? You know, when we designed it to a specification, to a space that we felt that this is what we feel very proudly about. It echoes our spirit of who we are. You know, it echoes that, you know, Mask is a fine dining restaurant. It's borrowing from tradition. The space, you know, Ashish designed, for instance, there is a divider in the restaurant which designs the dining room from the bar space. But it's like a large Rathinberman, which nobody even knows unless you really wonder, like, you know, what that big metal structure is. But it was because we loved that feeling of, you know, working with Indian artisans, and that's always been sort of the spirit of the restaurant, is that actually it was also the inspiration when Rathin came to design that piece. He was like, oh, you know, this restaurant, it's so much about the mills and the mill stories of Bombay, and he created this towering piece where now the buildings have overtaken those mill areas. So there's so much meaning behind everything that we put into that restaurant, but to a diner it may just feel like a metal structure. But for us, each one of these pieces has so much meaning, and I think that those meaningful pieces also started echoing in our food and stories, like the big drop curtain at Mask, where the chefs come from behind for service. It's almost theateresque. And really that also defined our service style at Mask, where every chef comes out to your table to give a very personal of the story, of the journey of the ingredient or the food, and that storytelling became very much part of the design and the experience you take back.
So you're saying you kind of like merged user experience, on-ground service logistics, brand story, and then integrated that into the design story?
Yes.
In some ways. Can I actually like take it one separate degree? So say, for example, the choice of color for 27, right? That extremely, at least in the Indian context, and design practitioners, you have got to excuse me because I'm going to use the wrong term. But you know, like that Raja Regal peacocky blue, was there intent in going down the design route for that brand with that very hot color?
It's actually a very expensive idea when you have to make everything blue. It's not. I mean, I think we did it because I love, and I'm always very inspired by art whenever I have to design something. And Yves Klein is one of my favorite artists. And it is the Yves Klein color. And so the whole bakehouse design was inspired by Yves Klein. And honestly, it is the most popping, like now, like, you know, Burberry's using it, and it's become the most trending color. You see it on social media platforms. You see, like, you know, creators using that color. So I feel very, very proud being part of that journey as well. And I think that, I think it so lends to, like, you know, anybody, you know, holding that bakehouse color knows that it's 27 Bakehouse, and the color has almost defined that branding for that brand. But it's been not a easy decision as an entrepreneur to use that color, because, you know, turning everything blue and creating everything with that color blue is a very expensive proposition.
I can only imagine. Pooja, you routinely include a big part of your Instagram community, including me, into the food story, right? Like that combination or just like experimentation in the kitchen to further the story. Do you infuse any of your personal or your kind of like cultural heritage into that piece when you eventually kind of like create for your consumer who could be sitting on or offline?
Okay, hi. Hi, can you guys hear me? Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, guys. I'm super excited to be here. I think there's two parts to this. What I do on Instagram is generally just to have a sense of community and storytell through that. So I just have a lot of fun. So I'll throw a question and tell people, give me 3 random ingredients and I'll make something with it. And I think that challenges me. And I don't know why everyone keeps including Karela in everything, but I actually did make a Karela cheesecake and something, and it was actually not bad. So I really do enjoy that. But going back to infusing culture and heritage, so when I was working in Paris, the one thing I realized by noticing a lot of Japanese chefs who were, and at that time I was 21, 22 years old. The pastry scene in India was very different than what it is today. And I saw the pride in which they used local ingredients, merged French and Japanese pastry together. And when I came back to India, one of the first lines that I wrote for what Lure 15 would stand for me was, French technique and Indian flavor. And now we're going to turn 15, so we've evolved quite a lot over the last 15 years. But in the first couple of years, had so much fun experimenting with green chilies, pan, we did, for Diwali, we would do all these different flavors. And some of them were very successful, and some of them, like, Kala Khata macaroon doesn't work, guys. But yeah, I have fun doing that as well. And now it's pretty standard. We know in Diwali we will be doing our Kaju Katli macaroon. That is a customer favorite. And then we the way we storytell with that is through different mediums online. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
We've all been talking about color, and I have to say, I think color, like you said, is such, you don't think of that when it comes to food, but it's such an important part of brand identity. And I have to tell you this, so when we had launched a pizza brand, Mac Street Toppings, and we were trying to design the box, and I said, I want it to be pink. And everyone was like, but pink is Lure 15's color. How can you do that? Everyone will think it's dessert. And I was like, I wanted to be pink. And finding that shade of pink that was not the Lure 15 pink was definitely a challenge. So I know what this means, but like color can actually really be a big part of, because in that distance when you see that, whether it's what you've done here, what you've created here, or you see a pizza delivery guy in the distance with that box, it really defines your identity.
And I think had to fight for that pink, So when so that's 183C on the Pantone. That's like, if anybody asks me what's my favorite color, I say it's 183C. But when I came back from Paris and I wanted to start Lure 15, I met a friend who's a graphic designer, and I was like, okay, I want to build this brand, and it has to be black and white and pink. And he's like, that is not food. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, we'll treat it like fashion. He's like, it can't be food. Food can't have this much color. And I had to fight with him for like months. And he's like, okay, you can have a pink box.
Can I ask why? Can I ask why you sidestepped the highly conditioned understanding of color versus food, or like color across food? You picked what you picked?
Because for me, when I was in India, all our cake boxes, now this is again 16, 20 years ago, everything was brown. Everything was brown. Every cake box was brown, or at the most white. And when I went to Paris, I saw so many vibrant colors, the way they would brand the boxes. And like Aditi said, it's so important, like when you see something from a distance, it should be identifiable. So I knew that it had to be a specific color, and that pink is my favorite color, also represents love, and that's why I wanted to have it. And then when we opened our first store in Palladium, I remember going to have coffee, and I would just see people walking around the mall with that little pink bag and pink box, and it would just make me so happy. And I'm like, okay, this is what the design really meant for us.
Just small thing to add to this. After the ID setup was done, Mohita calls me in the morning and says, "Oh my God, your blue stall is really standing out at ID amongst all the other people."
No, I love how color has such a big, almost like sometimes invisible, but an essential, pivotal aspect to brand story.
Yeah. Everybody's feeling insecure around our stall. They're like, bring those blue walls down.
Gauri, so I mean, the little that you do know me, you know that I use a lot of silly anecdotes to build syntax and sometimes tonality in conversation when you're building out a community. I know you're going to give me a side eye right now, but I personally love the way you write. For me, whenever you're talking about a story or a plate of food or a travel experience, because I know you have the travel bug, I think I'm usually drawn to your storytelling, which thank God you continue to kind of like show a certain finger to the running algo of like 80 characters and less, and like, thank God that you continue to write. How important is food as a medium to that language? Is there this kind of like understanding of culture, community, food, region, what have you, color, design, everything when telling the story?
You know, so the times when I ramble on and write a lot, it's because I'm truly sort of drawn into that world of whatever it is, and it's my little escape from the drudgery of work. And I can't take proper photographs, so I write instead to make up for it. But you know, I've learned. So we have an event space called Magazine Street Kitchen, which is in Baikala, which a lot of people who came there for the first time had no idea this part of Bombay existed, even though it's actually very central Bombay. But anyway, so that space is unlike restaurants, is a blank slate for us, and every time we host chefs there, it transforms into something else, which is, you know, of course, driven a lot by their cuisine or whatever they're trying to communicate through their food. And I think that the space has been around 8 years, and for someone who can't cook and who has zero interest in cooking, I love that space because I have just discovered so much about India, about, you know, the cuisine, even of Bombay. And I know that, you know, Aditi travels a lot, has like spent a lot of time traveling around India. I was a little late to the party, but it really is a party. It's like, and the thing is, there's so much excitement in learning and being like, oh, that's why they serve things like this. And that's why, you know, I'll give you an example. I recently came across Pathare Prabhu cuisine. How many of you all know what that is? Or which part of the country that's from? Okay, it's from Bombay. Okay, it's a community right here in Bombay. And it's a sort of sect of Maharashtrians that's an immigrant community. And I was invited to try their food. And, you know, I was like, okay, let's do this. I was blown away, okay? And it's Maharashtrian food. It's not doused in coconut. It's not about just peanuts and coconut, which is what, you know, and seafood, which is what we think of, associate with a lot of Maharashtrian cuisine. And they use ingredients like, so they'll make the, what is that, patra, the Gujarati patra. They have their own Maharashtrian version, but they put prawns in it. They put meat in it, right? Their desserts will have, and their savory food will have cashews in it. And the whole thought process behind this is that they were an affluent community, so their ingredients were a little sort of more expensive. They wanted to have more meat in their food, more non-vegetarian. And I just found that intriguing because, and then one of their desserts is a ghevar-inspired dessert because they're an immigrant community that made their way through Rajasthan to Bombay. And they've been in Bombay like centuries. But this is what I love about what we do, because clearly I'm not in the kitchen, so this is what my time gets spent in. And I was like, you know, and then that's what we brought to the kitchen, you know, and we had a lunch event there to introduce the food to more people, because this is where all citizens of Bombay and didn't even know, you know, about this 5 minutes, or at least I didn't know about it 5 minutes ago. But this is, I think, the storytelling that I love to share, because you don't just eat the food and enjoy it. I mean, that's one part of it. But to understand how this has influenced a community, why it's ended up being this way, I just find that really fascinating. And similarly, like, you know, we recently, last year, my highlight meal was Khasi food. Again, I sound super ignorant here, but I didn't even know about the Khasi tribe. And they're very much a part of India. It's just that they're that northeast India that, you know, we don't tend to give enough importance to. And, you know, understanding why they use so much pork and, you know, they don't have so many vegetables. It was like eye-opening. And, you know, this is the thing that I love about our work. And I know you also do a lot of this. So I think we're just like feeding off each other's discoveries. But I think this is the best part of the job.
No, and I personally love it. And if anyone isn't already kind of like following Gauri, follow her, if not for her obvious, you know, profession and career, but for her words. But it's really interesting
you.
how like the immigration of a community or like the spending capacity of a community also has connect and into the food story. So before I came in here, I had a lot of people who were dying to kind of hear what they all say, and they couldn't make it for whatever reasons. And so we have about top three questions for all of you off Instagram, all for Pooja. And essentially, these were like three questions that came in from like their super fans. I'm going to kick off with Aditi. There is a question from Mayank, who basically wants to know if there is one dish from your menu across, or even like the design presentation of, you know, a specific plate of food that embodies a memory for you. And I think what I gather from his question is that I think he wanted to find the merging of edible storytelling through your work.
I think that there is so much that we bring to our tables through our travels or through our journeys. Like, I remember when we went foraging to Ladakh, we collected, like, while foraging, collected a lot of stones that made it to our table, and we presented a dessert on it. But I think the most recent one that I am extremely proud about, or has a lot of meaning to me, is the mask thali. And it kind of also just embodies who we are as a restaurant group as well, where, you know, I think that for us, you know, being in food or hospitality is all about generosity. And I think the way we designed that thali is also, we worked with a local artisan to design an Indian thali, and also because it has so much meaning for me when, even when we do any collaborations or any international chefs come, or anyone that I want to sort of host beyond the restaurant setting, it would be at my mom's house, and I would present a thali, and a Rajasthani thali would be presented to them. So when we closed last year for a break, Varun and me traveled, and we worked with an artisan to design this thali, and we had to think about so many aspects of, you know, during a busy service time, how would a thali go on to, like, say, a table of 8, and the thali was designed with indents underneath the thali that, you know, the server could hold, and you could even sit 2 thalis on your hand. So it had so much thought process. And again, the thali was so much of a marriage of storytelling, where we, as, like, you know, global Indian citizens, the way we travel, the way we look at food, our travels are not just inspired by our travels in India, but also, you know, it's all a story of migration, our trips abroad, and how we connect with other cultures and relate it back to ours. And on the thali, I think it was really genius what Varun was doing, was marrying, like, say, a Japanese technique of, you know, sort of crispening the fish scales, and marrying that with a sarson ka saag. Or, like, you know, he was doing a tandoori crab, but inspired by his favorite restaurant, which is Trishna. So, and like, we were doing like a black garlic pulao, which is inspired by all the R&D that was happening at the lab. So just like bringing all those ideas, and, you know, and that made us realize that it's not about, oh, this is dish 1 and dish 2, but how do we marry all the ideas of what mask really is, what our research, what we stand as a restaurant, and we could present that in a thali. I think for me, that was the most exciting course at Mask.
Aditi, I'm obsessed with thalis. It's if anyone ever asks me,
I know
it's
you
usually
were running
my
a
like,
thali project.
it's my top favorite. In fact, like the Kasi thali is in my top 5. It's spectacular. But you know what? It's so interesting because I've never thought of it that way. But the element of design via the material aspect of it, the texturing of it, the containers of it, and then merge that into your food story, that's really cool. Gauri, question from Prerna. I'm already getting a stink eye, so I'm going to gently pivot my direction away from line of sight. How do you build a story which is sticky enough to keep your consumer coming back to you across all your successful establishments?
I think you just keep building on the story, right? It's like those games where you say one line and then I have to add to it, and then and it gets, and the story just builds, because especially at the table where the menu will keep evolving. We're coming up on 14 years. Chefs have changed over the years, and everyone brings their own little identity and style to the food, and so I think that's how the story just keeps evolving over time, and you have to keep challenging yourself. You have to keep challenging the diners a little bit, and so I think I think what I've learned, honestly, at least for our restaurants, is let the food just do the storytelling, and let it be whatever you interpret it to be, or don't interpret. Just enjoy it. Have a mindless experience and enjoy it, because that's we don't want to sort of tell you what you should think and feel when you're having that.
But that's what I'm saying. It's so interesting, because you may be possibly, one of the very few restaurateurs that I know who is thereby not so obsessed with holding narrative of that story, which is why this question came specifically to you, because there's a wee bit of nonchalance and ease of your story.
I think it is. I feel like we're really just having fun, and sometimes you just have to let people be, let the food speak for itself, and let people interpret things their own way. That's what our sort of, because I enjoy that. Again, this comes back to the very first point I made, which is everything we're doing is about, can I go, that's my benchmark, can I go and dine at my own restaurant every single day? And that's literally what we're guided by in everything we do. And I am very happy being left alone to my own devices and just having fun with the food, and that's what we've endeavored to do.
Love it. I feel like we seem to be mirroring a lot of that energy. Pooja, this question, I'm almost like collating multiple questions that came in from double digit, a lot of them being bakers. So this is going to be a little bit of the merging of food, design, story, and business. So many. How do you build a story or a brand design that helps you personally, not the brand at large, that helps you never to give up when the business is down? And I think primarily the question that they were seeking advice from you was that even though they believe in their business and their story and their design, etc., is there a mantra to constantly remind yourself that stay true to your path?
That's a tough one, no?
But everyone universally had this for you.
I feel like any kind of business, any kind of entrepreneurial journey has so many ups and downs. And I feel that if you really know, and I was really tested during COVID when I had to ask myself the really hard questions. And it kept going back to why, your why, why you do what you're doing. And I feel that if you lose track of that, it's very easy when things get overwhelming, as they often do, to kind of just let go and be like, I can't do this anymore, right? So I've seen in the last 15 years, many lows, which I talk very openly about on social media as well, because I believe that I've been sharing my journey so openly throughout. And there's no simple answer to this. It's just, I think the single most, and I think the ladies may agree, the single most mindset or the skill that you should have is just grit. I think it's whatever comes your way, you kind of figure it out. Sometimes you cry and then you get over it and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And you keep showing up. I think that keep showing up for it is very important. And I don't have any secret sauce other than just waking up and going there no matter how hard it gets.
That's amazing. If there is one person who consistently shows up, I have to say to you, but I really love what Gauri also said, that constant iteration process, that WIP doc, that the story, it isn't full stop, the punctuation is different. Essentially, I love that. Okay, so just in interest of time, this is a question for everyone in a couple of lines, which is, for you, and Pooja, we can kick off with you. What is the connection between design and story, which is essential for the success of your brand?
I think for me, the design process has always been about how something makes me feel. So whether it is how holding a box makes me feel, or when we had the cafe, how walking into the space made me feel. So I think that that's super important. And if I know how I feel, I'm able to communicate it and, tell it in a story much better. So I think for me, it really starts with how anything makes me feel.
Have that. Tapping into that emotional aspect of it. Love it. Aditi?
I think similarly for me as well, it's really emotion, memory, and a lot of nostalgia that makes me create what we create.
Can I extend that? I'm sorry, I'm being naughty, but I want to extend that. Nostalgia, memory, emotion sometimes is also like so personal, right? Like it could not be a shared reality for everyone. How do you kind of like stitch it into a story where the reception of that story could be 100 people, 1,000 people? How do you kind of like pass that story forward?
Honestly, like what Gauri said, like, if you feel like, you are the right, you can consume this every day without feeling tired. Like literally, I think I drive my team mad. I wake up with a new idea every day. So, yeah, so I think that, there's always excitement. I go somewhere and I'm like, okay, now we're doing this, or we're collaborating, or, we're rolling this out as our next product. We just started this, but now we're starting this brand. So it's just that feeling, having that excitement about what you love doing makes you keep wanting to create.
It's like when you're constantly solving for yourself.
Yes.
That story writes out. I love it. Gauri?
Yeah, I think it's basically what they said. But also, I think creating spaces for yourself. That's what's really always been. So even if you go to like Mag Street in Bandra, it's got art that we've been picking for the last 3 years with no space in mind. We didn't even have the space that we, ended up opening the Mag Street Bandra in. But they all found their home there, right? And so I think it's just about bringing your own and creating for yourself and believing that there'll be enough people who have, who enjoy it as much as you do. And, you can't please everyone. You can't design for everyone. You can't create food that everyone's going to love. And I think, so you have to start with yourself and then just believe that there'll be others that follow, that join you rather, and join you at the table. And, that's pretty much, I think, how our design has sort of played into everything we've built around food.
I love that. There couldn't have been a more beautiful and poetic way to kind of like summarize that chat. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon.
I have a small request.
Thank you.
I'm going to be making some amazing chai spice hot chocolate and macaroons at the Scarlet Splendor booth. So I hope you guys can come and taste some of the things that we make.
100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.